What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Sweat. Good to see you on a Friday morning. Adam Kaufman here, and we've got a lot to cover over the course of the next hour. But, of course, with football back, it begins with football, and we had two preseason games last night. The Giants won at the final second, beat the Patriots. The Titans, they were on the road, and, of course, they fell to the Ravens because Baltimore doesn't know how to lose in the preseason. It almost literally never happens, and still, it wasn't the big star from that team that was the big star last night. That's on the other side of the game, and that is Malik Willis, the man that Ryan Tannehill has absolutely no time for in his life. Made his preseason debut, 6 of 11, 107 in the air, rushing touchdown, also rushed for 38 yards, had the 14 fantasy points. He was not the high scorer on the night. That's a man by the name of Lil Jordan Humphrey, who has maybe the best name in football. But we're going to talk about last night. We're going to talk about that game and the other one as well with our NFL analysts, DK contributors Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich. Fellas, great to see you. As I mentioned, the two games last night. Jeff, we were on the slate. We talked a lot about those games, previewing them. So what came to fruition? What stood out to you? Jeff?
He's just shocked.
I know he was floored by the outcomes of those games. He can't even wrap his head around it, Pierce. I don't even think he look at him. I don't even think he knows the show has started.
Yeah, I mean, if Jeff was being sarcastic or whatever, he's doing a great job because there was nothing to be shocked about last night. Yeah, it's great that some of the guys that we predicted to play well, like Bailey Zappi, had a decent game. He threw for over 200 yards and a touchdown, so that's great. But who cares? We're never going to see much of him again. I guess if you're playing week 2 in DFS, you'll keep him on the radar. Malik Willis performed well, but it's preseason. Who really cares about that one as well? Mike Davis did well as predicted, got that first touchdown. But again, unless you're playing NFL DFS preseason, I don't know if we're going to see much of Mike Davis this season. We might. The Ravens like to use all of their running backs, but hey, I don't know. It's just nice to have football back.
Hey, Jeff, you here, buddy?
Back? I'm here. My technical difficulties, I apologize. The volume is working now. I couldn't hear anything, so.
All right, you did look really, really focused. You should go back and watch it later on the replay.
Yes, I was trying to fix the problem, so I was definitely focused, Kaufman. Thanks for bringing it up and keeping ruining the show by bringing it up.
You bet.
What's your
keep
question,
harping.
pal? Let's get to it.
Well, you couldn't tell from what Pierce was talking about. I want to know if there was anything that stood out to you last night.
I just got my volume back. My God, do you listen to anything?
Yeah,
yes,
I've been able to hear the whole time. Go ahead.
I mean, look. I think that the biggest takeaway is that people are going to start taking Malik Willis seriously. And I think it could lead to a bit of a dip on some of the Tennessee skill players. Like, no one's going to have any interest in Robert Woods anymore. Robert Woods is still going to be like the wide receiver one there. I think for the Giants, too, it was interesting to see. Like, I think that people are a little bit too down on some guys like Kenny Golladay. Everyone loved Kenny Golladay last year. And, where he's going in drafts and just his sentiment. So I think you could see a bounce back from a guy like that as well. But realistically, there's not. The Patriots, you can't take anything away because they were starting like their fourth stringer.
Mm-hmm.
And, like the Ravens are the Ravens. They did their Raven thing. They had a bunch of backups and they won the game. So, no, I think that Golladay is interesting. And I think that Malik Willis is definitely going to be someone that is going to get a lot of hype this preseason.
Jeff, your guy Bailey Zappi just balled out for the Pats.
Brady Zappa.
I wish we had more time to talk about, Brady Zappa. There are 5 more games tonight, though, guys. 9 more over the weekend. So, yes, I said it before. I'll say it again. Football very much back. Jeff, let's go right back to you just because I don't want you to lose your connection. Which storyline are you most excited for?
Yeah, so, obviously the big sort of focus is going to be on, Deshaun Watson, and everyone's going to want to see him. But I really don't think you're going to see Deshaun Watson out there. I think that the big story is the Green Bay 49ers game coming up today. We're going to finally see Jordan Love, play significant action in the preseason. People forget, this guy didn't have the preseason last year. We've never really seen him in a long stretch. I know he started games, but this is just, it's a little bit different to get out there and go up against some backups and stuff and just see him kind of start a game. This is going to be cool stuff. It's the guy we've been waiting for preseason action for a while. And on the other side, you could finally see some Trey Lance from the 49ers too. That's going to get hyper looked at. Trey Lance, the guy been shooting up draft boards. Best ball, his ADP is way up. So this game, if Trey Lance comes and plays 2 drives and he stinks, you might be a little bit of a dip there, which is fine because, I mean, like this game means nothing. It's preseason. But I think for the Jordan Love, aficionados, like myself, this Green Bay 49er game has a lot of intrigue. We want to see what this guy might have to offer down the road.
Well, Pierce, enjoy Deshaun while you've got him because you might not see him the entire regular season depending on how all this plays out. But building on what Jeff was talking about, what storyline are you most excited for this week?
Yeah, the Watson story, I believe, is a little too overhyped by the media. The real stories are the stories that actually matter for the regular season. Now, 90% of what we're going to see this weekend doesn't matter, but 10% does, and there are plenty of position battles. You go to the Steelers and the Seahawks game, you've got 5 quarterbacks all fighting for a starting position. We don't know who's going to start in Seattle. Geno is the starter right now. We see Mason Rudolph talk in the Steelers camp about him maybe starting. That's going to be an interesting game. Going to be really competitive. Kansas City running back battles, Miami running back battles, and let's not forget the Carolina Panthers quarterback battle this week. It seems like Baker Mayfield is taking over, but it's still really early. We can't make a decision there, and it's also going to be really fun to watch their rookie quarterback get some reps as well. So look at these position battles. That's the story to me.
Hey, and for a betting thing, Pierce is right. Watch what happens in that Carolina game because Baker Mayfield's betting prop, his yardage total for the year is still up. He might not even start. It could happen.
Let's zero in on tonight for a moment. I mentioned the 5-game slate, Pierce. Top DFS play. For the people that want daily fantasy preseason football talk, who are you going to play?
All right, I'm going to throw out a bunch of names, but we'll start with the one that Jeff already mentioned, which is Jordan Love. We expect him to play a lot with Rodgers out. They got to see what he's got. And you also want to test this receiving corps. Now, we're probably not going to see their starters play too much, but we want to see if they can add some depth. We know Christian Watson's out. Lazard's probably not going to play. But beyond Rodgers, we got to see what receivers can emerge. So the only way to really test them out is to pass the ball. And if you're going to want to test them, you probably want your best passer. That's going to be Jordan Love. I wouldn't be surprised to see 3 quarters of play from him. You might not get that from anybody else. And also, you're not going to get 3 quarters of play from as talented as a quarterback. You might get 3 quarters out of a third stringer. It's probably not going to be pretty, good. It's going to be ugly. You got Mike White's a possibility. Gardner Minshew's a possibility. The Philadelphia Eagles running backs are going to be somewhere you're going to want to look because of the injuries that they have between Huntley and Brooks. Brooks is a undrafted free agent out of Oklahoma, 3 1,000-yard seasons, 31 touchdowns. We know the Eagles like to run the ball. And then last but not least, 2 more. Puka Williams Jr., that might be a reach, but Trey Sermon's going to get a lot of heat because San Francisco, he's looked good in practice. He's really the only running back that they have. This is kind of his last chance to make the team. We were really high on him last season, and it didn't really work out. So expect a lot of Sermon tonight. Pierce
basically built the lineup for us, Jeff. You have any names to add there?
Oh, yeah. Dude, it's preseason. We're going to see so many people. And, I mean, I think Pierce definitely did a good job of covering the quarterback position, so I won't go too hard there. Reed Sinnett is a guy for the Eagles who might also play like a half. But, I think Pierce is right in saying, I don't know how good this guy's going to be. So I think Jordan Love is rightfully so getting a lot of heat. But, look, Zay Jones is a guy from Jacksonville. You're going to see some starters. I'm kind of interested to see Zay Jones, and I think he's playable tonight. He, that's just not a deep receiving core, and I think Zay Jones is a guy who wants to emerge there. Andy Isabella, the preseason darling. Don't forget about this guy. He's probably going to be out there on the field making some plays. He's certainly a player in Isabella who, against weaker competition, if he is out there, then it's not out of the woods to say he takes a 60-yard touchdown pass. JJ Sarah Whiteside now moved to tight end for Philly. If you're looking for a tight end play, I'm interested to see how that works out. But I do like Trey Sermon as well. Don't forget about Tyron Davis-Price, though. He should be out there for the 49ers, too. So I think you could almost play both San Francisco running backs. I think that's an interesting move. And then, again, just to touch on that Green Bay wide receiver situation, Juwan Winfrey is probably where I would go. I'm very interested to see Romeo Doubs play. But because he's just emerged as the number 1 wide receiver in camp, I'm not sure how much run they give him. I think Winfrey is more likely to give you more snaps. So,
over on the DraftKings Sportsbook, Jeff, do you have a favorite best bet for tonight?
Yeah, so for tonight, I like the Eagles quite a bit. You look at what the Eagles are going to be throwing out. Gardner Minshew is going to be out there and easily probably going to be the most competent quarterback on the field, even if Zach Wilson does play. I like their depth chart as well. You could see very competent running backs play. Boston Scott is a guy who's got potential to be out there. and they have pretty solid just depth at most positions. So I think that the Eagles are a team that could easily just kind of win very, very going away tonight. The Jets I don't think are going to mess around and give their rookies a ton of love here. They're going to a season having to rely on guys like, Wilson and Breece Hall. These guys are going to be getting big workloads. I don't think they're going to be throwing them out there for big snaps. I think you're going to see the Jets just kind of show up tonight and do nothing. Really like the Eagles at -1 right now, or just the money line at -110.
Pierce, just looking at it, you got all those spreads are between 1 point and 2.5. All the over-unders are low to basically mid-30s. So what about you?
An interesting thing, I liked the Falcons yesterday at -1. It's now Falcons +2.5. So to see these lines moving around the way that they are, it's very peculiar. I'll take it because I like the Falcons a lot better. Really, one of the deciding factors for me is quarterback play in the preseason, and you're going to get a lot from the backups at Detroit, whereas with Atlanta, there's a quarterback battle. It may not be one of the more glamorous quarterback battles, but Mariota's got to earn the position. It could easily go to Desmond Ridder. So you're going to get a full game out of decent quarterbacks, and if they're really trying to evaluate the talent, they're going to want to have decent players for them to pass to. I can't speak much to the defenses here, but offensively, I think there's a clear advantage for the Falcons. So if I'm going to get 2.5 points, I'll take that every day.
Pierce, let's circle back to DFS then. Look at the weekend slate. 9 games, 9 more over the weekend. So who do you want to play?
Damien Pierce is going to be very popular. He's the 4th-round pick, and Houston really doesn't have anybody else. Marlon Mack, maybe he could have a good season, but he gets injured about 5 times every season. I can't imagine he's going to get much work in the preseason. I can't imagine that they're going to give Rex Burkhead too much work. They know what they have there. So you got the 4th-rounder. You might as well just pound him into the ground. I don't see any other running back on the slate getting as much work. And then also Rashard Higgins. He's more than likely going to make the team for the Panthers, but there's no guarantee. He's going to have to prove it. He's got, past chemistry with Baker Mayfield. Also for the Panthers, Shi Smith battling for a final position because DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, they're not going to play. So we're pretty confident that the Panthers are going to want to see what these quarterbacks can do. If you're going to have a quarterback battle, they're going to have to pass the ball to somebody. Shi Smith, Rashard Higgins should get plenty of work.
What do you say, Moose?
I like looking at the Chiefs as well. Isaiah Pacheco, should be getting a lot of love there, and potentially Ronald Jones too. Andy Reid does like to play, some of these like more significant players in the preseason. So I think both those running backs are a really good spot to look at. There's so many games, and we still could get news, but like looking at what the Steelers are going to do, I think is going to be potentially very vital for this weekend slate. Trubisky, like you're going to see all 3 quarterbacks, but again, remember, these are for preseason, Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, and Kenny Pickett. These are good quarterbacks for preseason. So if you get news that Pickett's going to play the entire second half, I think it's a very good spot to go and really, really check out the news on what George Pickens. If they're planning on playing him like a half, you have to play George Pickens. This guy has been absolutely dominating to the point where Steelers beat writers have been saying they haven't seen a wide receiver dominate this much in a training camp. These are people who have seen Antonio Brown, Deontay Johnson, the long list of Steelers wide receivers. They're saying George Pickens is dominating better than these guys. You just play him. If he's going to be out there for more than a quarter, absolutely, George Pickens. All
right, let's pivot back to the DraftKings Sportsbook then, Jeff, and take a look at the weekend games. Continue to take a look at the weekend games with your best bet.
Yeah, I'll take the Chiefs here over the Bears just because it's the Bears and it's Andy Reid in preseason. I think that's a fair enough spot to look at. I also do kind of like the under. I know I just built up the Steelers and their quarterback room, but at 37 for a preseason game, I think the Seahawks are a team that just might score 6 points in this game. So I'll take the under in the Pittsburgh Seahawks game as well. It looks like this total is being bet up because everyone figures the Steelers offense is going to be some unstoppable force because Mason Rudolph is going to be out there. That's obviously ridiculous. Take the under at 37. That's just too big for preseason.
All right, Pierce, what do you think?
This will probably be the only time I do this all season. I will take the Texans and I will lay the points. So Texans -1. Imagine that, a world where the Texans are favored. But the Saints aren't going to play their stars. The Texans don't have any stars. So the Texans are going to roll their first string out there against the second string or third string. The Saints, they've got health issues already, so we're not going to get much of the first team. And with the Saints, you're more than likely going to get a half out of Ian Book. So that's going to be a hard pass for me. The Texans, Yeah, their first string's not very good. Their second string's not very good. But I'll take that matched up against Ian Book and a third string.
You know, normally we would take a break, guys, but I want you to continue to hang out here with us, and let's make the move from football to NASCAR, something that honestly this time of year just means a little bit more. And Pierce, unfortunately for you, another DNS last week. Jeff, he gained 41 more points in the Cup standings. Strong race for Martin Truex. Big fan of his. Pierce, you're still ahead by 79 points, though. I love that graphic. That looks awesome. Those little heads. Even got the soul patch on Moose. That's terrific. NASCAR Federated Auto Parts 400 on the way. We're going to break it all down. But first, Pierce, do you have a reaction? Do you feel like you're losing ground?
I didn't get to make a pick last week. I offered to make a pick, and the producers decided, no, you're good. We'll let Jeff catch up.
Well, I was good. Jeff, no response other than a thank you.
That's what happens when you actually send the Christmas cards to the producers, Pierce. They give you favors, and when you're nice to people, you should try it.
I'll think about that.
Well, guys, back at Richmond where Denny Hamlin won in April, nicknamed the Action Track, Pierce, we always see a lot of contact. So what's the approach this week as far as picking drivers?
The difference here, the winning lineup is going to have 3 drivers that lead a bunch of laps. So you have to target those guys. It's not necessarily going to be the fastest car in practice or the fastest car this season. It's going to be one of the fastest cars. This is a very hard track to pass at. So what happens is you would think, well, if it's hard to pass, then you're not going to see a bunch of guys lead laps. But you will, because we have a pit cycling issue. The way that it works is you don't pass a guy on track. You just pit sooner. So if car A pits before car B that's in the lead, well, 2 laps later, after running on fresh tires, car A makes up a 6-second gap. So either way, if you guys don't really care about all this stuff, there's going to be lead changes regardless of the speed or the talent of the car, just in the way that the pit sequencing happens. And the way that it shakes out, long story short, you're going to have at least 3 expensive drivers that are going to lead a significant amount of laps, and you need to get those guys into your lineups.
Jeff, what's your strategy? I mean, my strategy is just try to avoid people who crash. So, which is basically an impossible task to predict. But with the style of race, I do think that again, you need to get as many studs in your lineup. This is not a week where I'd be looking. I know last week we talked about it. I think fading the top, some of the top guys actually did. It's almost have. You could even think about starting with 3 guys over 9,600, and then really dipping down deep and just getting these drivers who, again, if you land on them and they get across the finish line, and Pierce is right, you nail your couple studs. I think that's got to be the strategy for me. So it's a DFS thing. And from a lineup construction, again, I'm not going to dive into the course because I quite frankly have nowhere near the knowledge of the sport as Pierce. But for DFS construction, you should definitely be looking to stack the high-end price guys and really dip down deep. I think you can almost cut out a section of this field when you're making lineups.
Well, if you're going to that middle ground, semi-middle ground anyway, and you're looking for a driver, Jeff, under 8K this week, who do you like? Would you go all the way down to, say, Brad Keselowski at 6,900?
Yeah, he's 7,000. But yeah, I mean, I think you can. I think you should almost this is the range I'm talking about. Jones, Gibbs, Cindric. I mean, obviously these guys are good drivers, but from a points perspective this week, if you can get 40 points from Michael McDowell, which he's done on numerous occasions, that's probably a guy you should be targeting. And then again, Todd Gilliland is another driver who's just consistently getting you points. Again, we can go deeper into this if we had more time, and we can talk about track history and stuff like that. But Gilliland, Michael McDowell, these guys have been really producing at just solid rates for their price. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is another driver who, if he pops for 50 points here or something like that, these are the type of drivers you should be targeting. Some of them are a little bit more boom or bust, but I mean, those are 3 guys down deep that I would really be looking hard at this week, and they're going to help you get in that extra stud in your lineup.
All right, that's just a tease for you because rest assured we are not done with NASCAR, but we are going to step aside very quickly. We'll be right back. More from Jeff and Pierce. All right, we're back here on The Sweat and still with Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich, our DK contributors, talking NASCAR. So let's head back to the track and head back to these guys. And Jeff, obviously we just heard from you as far as a driver you really like under 8K. So Pierce, same to you. Who stands out?
Well, I just want to reiterate the point that Jeff made about roster construction. It's a big deal. If we need 3 drivers over $9,600, it's going to be hard to target these guys into $8,000. So they're going to go low owned. A lot of people are going to go double punt and roster 2 drivers under 6K and try to fire 4 bullets at nailing the guys that lead laps. And if that's the case, again, you're going to see these 8K drivers go under owned. People might be able to squeeze in Brad Keselowski, as you mentioned. So he probably will be quite popular. But if you spend up a little more, you get Chase Briscoe. Briscoe typically struggles at these short flat tracks, but this season he won at a short flat track in Phoenix. At Richmond in the spring, he really struggled in stage 1, but he rebounded to get a top 15 finish at Richmond. Those are guys that if I can make them work, it's going to be hard because it may limit your ability to roster some of those top tier drivers that are going to lead laps, but it will definitely help you differentiate. And we know that Briscoe has upside. Gibbs as well. Ty Gibbs has looked great in the Cup Series. These 2311 Toyotas are very impressive. They looked really good last week. He won the Richmond race in the spring in the Xfinity Series.
Jeff, how about we jump up in range just a little bit? We go 8K to 10K. Who do you like?
Yeah, I mean, from 8K, like if we're going under 10K, Ryan Blaney is a driver. And I'm not sure how much he'll get. I mean, Pierce definitely will be more in tune with that. But I think Blaney is a great pick there. Again, he doesn't have to be your guy that you build around or the guy that you start with. You can play if you want Truex and Blaney, that's a good starting point. But with Ryan Blaney being a little bit less expensive, that's a good pick. And again, like you go down to track history, he's had a bunch of top 5s at these short style of tracks. Phoenix is one that jumps out where he again obviously finished runner up. So he's definitely my favorite driver in this range. But Chris Bell is definitely still playable, absolutely. Kevin Harvick, I think that again that's another driver you can just go right back to. So those are probably the 3 guys I'd be the most interested in. Like Alex Bowman seems like a pretty easy guy to write off. I'm not sure about Daniel Suarez either. I know they're cheaper, but again, like the theme is, I think at the top you've really got to pay for the quality and then just go cheaper for your value.
Pierce, how about for you?
Well, I wouldn't rely on Alex Bowman. He hasn't put up a big fantasy score at Richmond over the last couple of seasons, but he won the Richmond race in the spring of 2021. This season at Richmond, he drove through the field twice. He started in the back, then he suffered a penalty, drove right back to the front, got into the top 10. So he's clearly fast here. And as we mentioned earlier, it's not necessarily going to be the fastest car or the best car that leads laps. It's about pit cycling. He may decide that he's only going to pit once during a stage. And so he cycles to the front and leads 30 meaningless laps. Well, those 30 meaningless laps that he leads in the middle of the race help in fantasy. That could easily be him. We saw William Byron do that in the spring race. William Byron doesn't win the race, but he gets on a different pit cycle, and he scored the most points in the Richmond race. He's just a little bit more. Byron, Bell, just to add to that, Bell has 3 Xfinity wins at Richmond. He nearly won this race in the spring, and he's not that expensive. He pairs really well. If we're taking 2 top-tier guys and we need a 3rd guy to lead laps, Bell, Byron, or Bowman, any of these 3 Bs seem to be the guys to target.
Pierce, who's somebody just your favorite driver this week? Is it by any chance somebody at the top we haven't mentioned? Jeff's guy Truex. You got, obviously, I'm looking at the board here, Busch, Hamlin, Elliott. There are a whole bunch of names that are close.
It's Jeff's guy Truex. 7 consecutive top 5s at this track. That includes 3 wins, and he should have won at this racetrack in the spring. You look at the last 8 races at Richmond, he has a top 5 DFS score in every single one of them. 4 times he scored the 2nd most fantasy points. 2 times he scored the most fantasy points, and the other 2 times he scored the 5th most fantasy points. So regardless of whether he wins, although he wins more than anyone else, if we're talking about who's going to score fantasy points, well, I think it's Martin Truex Jr. And oh, by the way, he is in desperate need of a win to make the playoffs. Truex, I think without a doubt is going to be, especially since he's not even that expensive, will be the most popular play this weekend.
Jeff, anyone different, or would you go right back to your guy?
No, I mean, Truex Jr. is definitely going to get some heat, and for rightfully so. But I'm going to go to Ross Chastain at 10,100. I know I was just talking about Ryan Blaney. I believe I got their stats mixed up, and I was talking about the wrong driver. So, again, my greenness was shining through here. But Ross Chastain at 10,100 had a bunch of short tracks results. and good short track results. And again, like at 10,100, you're getting him a little bit cheaper than the top 5 drivers. So Chastain's going to be my pick here. And I do like him for some matchup props, which I think we're going to hit on before we leave. So.
Well, let's go bets on the DraftKings Sportsbook, Jeff. Let's, right there. Is there something that does stand out to you more than anything else? Is it a matchup prop?
Yeah, I think this is a good week to take matchup props, because you've got some of these specialists that have performed better on these short tracks. You can definitely look, like, if you want a long shot for the outright, I think Bubba Wallace has been driving well. Maybe take him as a top 5. He's plus 2,000. I like Chastain in the outright department as well. But again, like for driver props, you can get Chastain versus Ryan Blaney. These two have had kind of just pretty much opposite results on these like shorter tracks, with Chastain having the better results. I know, again, I mixed them up earlier in the show, but I do like Chastain there, minus 110 versus Ryan Blaney. That's probably my favorite matchup prop that I had circled. And then again, for outrights, I like Chastain as well.
Favorite bet there, Pierce?
Bowman to win. The sportsbook always misses on him, and he surprises and comes in with a pretty good long shot return. And then in the weekly specials, I like all the Hendrick drivers to finish inside the top 10. That was plus 900 last time I looked. I think that it's not much of a stretch to think that the Hendrick cars can get there. I also like a Hendrick car to win. JGR is heavily favored this week, but it doesn't really come down to the fastest car. It's just going to come down to who gets on the right pit cycle in stage 3, and so I'll take the longer odds.
Guys, it's crazy, but time flies when you're having fun. We're about halfway home here on The Sweat. We say goodbye to Jeff, to Pierce. They were terrific with us the last couple of segments, but we're going to let them go. We're going to do baseball with a new group, a new panel coming up on the other side. All right, let's get into a little baseball talk with a busy slate on the diamond tonight, back here on The Sweat, and with a new crew that we will introduce in just a moment. But first, we got to show you what's happening tonight. Some of the pitchers that jump out at you. How about Max Scherzer, right at the top of the board, available to you this evening? Yeah, he's expensive, sure, $10,900. He's also really flipping good. About 40 fantasy points last time out. Let's bring in DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne, Matt Meiselman, RotoWire's Paul Bruno as well. And fellas, obviously, great to see you. Great to have you here with us. We're going to talk DFS. We're going to talk sportsbook plays in various price ranges, everything available to you tonight. And let's start pitcher over 8K, Gary. And I know that Max Scherzer's way over 8K, obviously, almost $3,000 over, but is he still the best guy tonight?
Yeah, I think you can obviously make a case that Scherzer or Rodon, considering Rodon's matchup, are far and away the two best options, or the two most obvious options. I also really like Tyler Mahle, who's $8,500. The Angels haven't been striking out like they were striking out to begin July, but they've still been pretty bad in the month of August. They've got just an 85 WRC plus as a team. They are 4th in chase rate. They are 4th in swinging strike rate, and that's translated out to a strikeout in about a quarter of their plate appearances so far in the month. So Mahle, who's been fantastic this season when pitching away from Great American Ballpark, which is something he won't have to do, I mean, I won't say ever again, but not nearly as often now that he's been traded to the Minnesota Twins. But his last 9 starts overall, an ERA hovering around 3.5, a strikeout rate of 27%. At 8,500, I just think with his level of strikeout upside, he's a little underpriced. So I would put him in that class with Scherzer and with Rodon tonight.
Well, and I guess you kind of have to ask yourself that, Matt. Who's the bigger sure thing? Are Scherzer and Rodon a lock and therefore willing to pay up for them, or do you take a little bit of a savings, go with a guy like Molly, or maybe somebody else you have on your mind over 8K?
So I think you have to play one of them. This is weird because if you're playing a GPP and you play both Scherzer and Rodon, you are stuck with a lineup that's very similar to a lot of other people. And before yesterday, I probably would have just been like, yeah, you can fade Scherzer and play Rodon because the Phillies offense is good. But the big difference now from yesterday is that Kyle Schwarber left yesterday's game with an injury. And the two biggest problems for Max Scherzer in terms of his opponent are generally left-handed hitters and power hitting just across the board. And Schwarber is like the best guy in terms of power hitting lefties in the MLB. So removing him from the Phillies lineup, I think it puts Scherzer ahead of Rodon, where otherwise I probably would have preferred Rodon. So these are my two favorite pitchers on the slate. It's just, I think if you're playing a tournament, you kind of just have to pick one. And I lean Scherzer really because Schwarber is out, and I'm not sure it gets quite accounted for enough just how much of a downgrade this is in this particular matchup, where Schwarber was the one guy who you really thought could give Scherzer some problems.
Paulie, who do you like on the mound over 8K?
Well, I want to differ from the other guys because they certainly made the case for the top two guys. I see a number of high-priced guys, but some of the other guys at the top of the board are also having trouble keeping a lid on opposing offenses. So I go a little bit lower to $9,200 for George Kirby. I'll always lean to a pitcher who comes off a series of good performances and faces off against lesser opposition. This checks both boxes for me this evening. He's limited the damage to only 6 earned runs over his last 5 starts, and that covers 26 innings with 32 strikeouts and 4 walks. Meanwhile, Texas is on a bullpen day with lefty Taylor Hearn on the mound. The Rangers are 3-7 in their last 10 and falling out of playoff contention, while Seattle's right in the mix, second in the wild card. So the win probability is very high here for the Seattle pitcher.
All right, guys, let's take a look at infielders who are at least $4,500. Mize, will go back to you. Could I interest you in, I don't know, how about Trey Turner tonight?
I normally really like Trey Turner, and I normally like all the Dodgers, and he might be in my top 3 favorite infielders, but I have a couple guys I like better, and I think Devers is going to be my favorite. So I've been picking the Red Sox a lot for betting and for DFS. One of those has been good. The other one has not been.
How's that treating you?
Yeah, it's been treating me well in terms of Red Sox team totals and in terms of fantasy lineups. They're not winning, but if you pick Devers in fantasy, he can do quite well, and you still don't need the team to win. So I think this matchup against Domingo Germán is a good one, but more of what this comes down to is I think the field is going to play a lot of Coors Field. It's not a great pitching matchup there between Zach Davies and Antonio Senzatella. I think the Dodgers in Kansas City are going to be relatively popular, and I think the Yankees and Padres, too, are going to be pretty chalky offenses. So I think the Red Sox are just below that ownership tier where they are in a really good spot, but they're just below that cutoff where I think there's a case that's slightly better for a few other teams. And because of that, I think the Red Sox overall kind of go overlooked, and Devers is their best hitter. He's reasonably affordable. It's a really good matchup at Fenway, so I like him a lot for tonight.
Pablo, would you also like to suck up to me and my Red Sox fandom?
No, I hate the Red Sox. RotoWire's value report cites Justin Turner at the top of the board with an expected 12.65 points tonight, costing $5,500. It's never a bad decision to consider a guy in the top third of the Dodgers lineup, especially when a favorable matchup like tonight. But he's got 9 hits in his last 6 games to boost that. He'll be getting the platoon advantage against Royals starter Daniel Lynch as well, who's pitched to a lofty 4.79 ERA year to date. I also like Manny Machado and the Padres to roll into Washington as heavy favorites tonight, looking for the San Diego third baseman to continue a recent hot streak that's seen him collect 12 hits in his last 8 starts. He's facing Corey Abbott, who's been promoted from the bullpen and been moved to a starter role over the last 2 weeks. He was shelled for 7 earned runs on only 3 2/3 innings his last start, and I think that could be a mirror image of what happens to him tonight.
Garion, what jumps out at you?
Well, I won't take you up on your Red Sox offer.
I knew you
will take
wouldn't.
you up on your initial Trey Turner offer.
Okay.
Look, Trey Turner, there's a case to be made. He's the best hitter of left-handed pitching in all of baseball. And it's really interesting to see that he becomes like a different archetype of hitter even when he gets to face a lefty versus a righty. The power is just so much more apparent in the opposite hand matchup. He's got a 617 slugging percentage against southpaws this season. He's got a 173 WRC plus within the split. I will say a full out Dodgers stack might be a little scarier than some people are presenting it as, just because Daniel Lynch has quietly been living up to his like top prospect pedigree the past 4 to 5 weeks. His FIP is fantastic in that span of time. So maybe he doesn't get absolutely destroyed by this Dodgers offense like a lot of people would expect. So I would tread a little carefully, but Trey Turner on an island, I never have a problem with that against a left-handed pitcher.
Okay, so now I want an outfielder over 4,500, and I want to see if I can woo one of you with Charlie Blackmon. If I can, just start talking if you have him. Wishful thinking. All right, Paul, who do you have?
Juan Soto should be a strong consideration for $5,900 for all the same reasons as I mentioned Machado earlier. But I also want to consider Yordan Alvarez for $5,800 against the A's and their starter Alan Ollier, who's been roughed up over his last 4 starts, allowing 14 earned runs, 6 of those runs coming off home runs in only 20 and 2/3 innings pitched. Alvarez has been struggling a bit lately, but this seems like a good spot where he's going to rebound.
What do you think, Garion?
So I've sort of become like Sideshow Bob, and the rake is the Chicago White Sox. I just keep going like, oh man, the White Sox are facing a lefty tonight. They're going to score so many runs. They're so good against lefties, and they're not. They suck. They're just a cursed team, and they're terrible. However, Luis Robert should be more expensive than $5,100 going up against Daniel Norris. I mean, Daniel Norris has made 2 major league starts the last 3 years. This is not someone who would be starting for a team that just wasn't absolutely desperate like the Tigers currently are. So Luis Robert is hitting 400 against left-handed pitching so far this season. He's got a 196 WRC plus within the split. The 36 plate appearances he's taken against lefties, specifically in Chicago at his home ballpark, he's got a 323 isolated power and an OPS up over 1.2. So again, be fully prepared to be let down by the Chicago White Sox, but Luis Robert should probably be more expensive. I would say like 5.6, 5.7 tonight, not 5.1.
For anyone that hasn't seen that episode of the meme, what great imagery of just seeing Garion face planted by the end of a rake.
Tony La Russa slapping me in the face every way I turn.
I can't stop thinking about it now. Mize, an outfielder over 4,500.
Yeah, I'm going way over 40. Sorry.
He's choked up. He can't even handle how much he likes his pick.
I'm really excited about how bad the White Sox have been. It's more about that. So I'm going to save one more segment for that one. I'm paying way up, partly because this is an ownership thing. Like, this is the theme for me for tonight, where I think you don't pay for both expensive pitchers, and because of that, you'll be unique in being able to afford more expensive hitters. So the guy I like the most is Shohei Ohtani. I think there's a case for both AL MVP candidates tonight. They're both over 6K. But Ohtani in particular, I think just about no one's going to go there. One, because he's $6,200. It's hard to afford him. And 2, because no one in their right mind is actually playing the full stack. So he's not coming along for the ride in an anywhere near chalky Angel stack. No one is playing that. But his individual matchup against Tyler Mahle is really good. So I think the Angels probably don't score a lot of runs tonight. But I think Ohtani could still hit a home run, maybe steal a base. He's a really good fantasy player. Worst case, he probably walks a couple times, because what pitcher wouldn't just put Ohtani on base and face, everyone else in the lineup? So I think it's going to be a pretty contrarian move, but I really like the spot for Ohtani tonight. And I don't think other people are going to do it.
Guys, pay attention, because this next one you have options. I want value plays, but you can, it's your choice. You can give me a hitter under 3K or a pitcher under 7,000. Paul, I'm going to start with you, and I feel like there are a lot of guys you have options with at the plate, but on the mound, it's got to be somebody like Jordan Montgomery.
And that's exactly where I land. I look at the matchup, and he's coming up a strong effort in his last game against his former club, the Yankees, blanking them over 5 innings pitched. Now, I know the Yanks are struggling, but it's still pretty notable that he kept them scoreless. St. Louis is playing much better ball of late, and they're 8-2 in their last 10, while the Brewers are only 4-6. The Cards' righty power bats will get the platoon edge against lefty starter Eric Lauer, so that boosts the win probability here as well. But I'm also going to give you something to think about at bat. Brandon Crawford of the Giants came off the IL after being sidelined for about a month and collected 4 hits over 4 games last week. And I like his chances of extending that success against Pittsburgh starter Bryce Wilson, who's not a big strikeout guy and has been plagued by the long ball, giving up 9 bombs over his last 37 innings pitched.
Gary, and let's see if I can go 2 for 2. Can I interest you in Montero for the Rockies?
Well, I'm gonna go to that game because I'm only a human.
Close enough. I'll take it.
I fully agree with Matt. This is gonna be the chalkiest game possibly of the week. I mean, this is just a terrible pitching matchup. Coors has paid off every single night this week as well. Like it's just been such a treasure trove that people are going to continue to go back to it. But when you can get a bare minimum bat in an opposite hand matchup, again, I'm weak. I'm just human. Seth Beer, who is $2,000 flat. He's been absolutely terrible at the major league level. Has hit really well in AAA for the Diamondbacks organization. But his major issue has been strikeouts, and that's just not really that big a concern against Antonio Senzatella, who cannot strike anyone out. So I think if you remove the biggest weakness for Seth Beer, you stick him in Coors Field, obviously there's a lot to like there. He's probably only going to be hitting 7th or 8th in this Diamondbacks lineup. But again, for the absolute bare minimum, I think he could do a whole lot worse.
There is a lot in that game, Matt, whether it's McCarthy, I mentioned Montero, Daz is another option. You can keep going down, obviously. Who do you like?
Yeah, I think that game's a full fade for me in GPPs. If you want to play those guys in cash, they are underpriced. I just think the ownership is going to be way too high. This is a big slate. There are a lot of good choices. So I do like Jordan Montgomery also. Like, I'll keep this one short. Maybe I give a second guy because I think the way that the slate sets up, you're going to see a lot of Scherzer plus Rodon plus Coors lineups. And playing Montgomery, even if it's like moderately popular, like he won't be super contrarian, but it allows you to play contrarian bats. So even at somewhat decent ownership, $6,800 is way too cheap for Montgomery, and you can play more expensive hitters with him. I'm going to cheat a little with this other guy, though. Patrick Sandoval is a little over 7K at 7,500, but Byron Buxton has been sitting a lot recently, so for him, I think you want to wait on a Twins lineup and see if maybe you can get that news later. And people don't realize that Sandoval is in quite a good spot if you catch the Twins lineup for him without Buxton in it.
It's been a lot of DFS talk, but it's not all DFS, guys. How about a favorite play on the DraftKings Sportsbook for plus money tonight? Matt, let's go right back to you.
Okay, so I have this jersey on because this is my pick for tonight. This is actually an Andrew Benintendi Royals jersey, so it doesn't even work for the.
Hey, he was an all-star.
Yeah. He's great. I love Andrew Benintendi, especially when he's stealing bases against Noah Syndergaard. But that has nothing to do with the Royals pick for tonight. I just continue to think that Tony Gonsolin is way overrated. But we're getting the added bonus tonight of this not just being a one-sided pick. Garion already touched on Daniel Lynch. Like, I actually do think Lynch is a pretty solid pitcher. And even against righties this year, he's striking out almost 10 batters per 9 innings. So I don't know where this came from. Like, Lynch isn't a really highly regarded prospect or anything like that, but he's been pretty good. And yes, I love the Dodgers offense, but you're getting north of plus 200 here. So I think these odds are just too high. I think this is a game that should be around 150 or so, and it's a decent amount of extra value on the Royals side.
Paul?
I take the over in the matchup between the Padres and the Washington club, looking for the power bats of the visitors to be a big factor. They'll probably get to the run line of 9, maybe by themselves, reminding you of the mismatch that I highlighted here earlier. I also like the underside of the game total, a pitching matchup that features Cal Quantrill coming back to Toronto, where his father played for several years. He always gets up for games against the Jays. On the other side, you got Jose Barrios, who does his imitation of Clark Kent on the road, and Superman at home. The splits are ridiculous. At home, he's undefeated in his last 13 starts. Dating back to last season, he's 6-0 with a 3.23 ERA and 11 starts this season at the Rogers Center, and I think you're going to see another solid effort from him at home tonight.
Gary, and take us home.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Jordan Montgomery. Little surprised, even with Milwaukee's struggles against left-handed pitching this season, that his strikeout prop is at 5.5, and it's plus 100 to the under. Jordan Montgomery has definitely been more of a strikeout pitcher in the past, but that has not been the case in 2022, where he's been well below average in many of the key categories you would look at to define a strikeout pitcher. In fact, he has gone under 5.5 strikeouts in 18 of his 22 starts this season. So again, just a little surprised it is plus money to the under tonight. Milwaukee's actually been better against lefties as of late. They've really started to utilize their platoons a little bit more. Obviously, Hunter Renfroe got healthy. Omar Narvaez and Jace Peterson got hurt, sort of removing some left-handed options from their lineup. But they have the 6th lowest chase rate since the All-Star break. So Jordan Montgomery might have a really good game, but he might only strike out 4 or 5 batters because that's generally what he's done so far this season.
Guys, I've learned a lot. I really enjoy your time. Thank you for being here with us. We're going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good luck with your bets and your lineups tonight. We're not done here on the show, though. We are going to talk a little college football. Colin Sherwin joins us coming up on The Sweat. How about a little conference-by-conference look at the college football landscape going into the season? Today, we're going to do a little Big 12 talk. Let's show you what we're looking at on the DraftKings Sportsbooks and Big 12 preview. Coaches poll rankings, odds to win the conference. Oklahoma coming in at number 9 overall, but at plus 200 within that conference. Baylor plus 650, Oklahoma State plus 550, and Texas plus 280, but I'm also going to assume you are capable of reading if you're watching this show. So thank you for being with us. Colin Sherwin, DraftKings contributor, is here with us as well. And Colin, let's take a little look at what's going on here. Now, Texas got, a first place vote, and no, it wasn't Mac Brown or a member of the Manning family. Bijan Robinson could be getting a few votes come December. He's got the best odds for anyone in the Big 12 in the DraftKings Sportsbook to win the Heisman. So your best bet from this conference for a Heisman future, who would it be?
Adam, good to see you, sir. But I do wish it was Emerson Latsi in that chair right now because
son of a gun.
I was going to attack his heart because I really like Dylan Gabriel at 30-1 to be the have a chance to get to New York for the Heisman. So as a Gabriel transferred from Central Florida to Oklahoma in the offseason as Caleb Williams went from Oklahoma to USC. So as somebody who watched Dylan Gabriel for multiple seasons at a school that I loathed entirely because I went to South Florida, he's terrifying. He's really good. 70 career touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 8,000 career passing yards in about 30 games. Also 8 career rushing TDs. The guy can just really play. And he's a little small. You're always going to have an injury risk with him. But I really like the value on him at 30-1 more than I would anybody else. If Oklahoma does find a way to run out this season and they don't have the toughest schedule out of conference, anybody who goes 12-0 with a new coach and it's sort of a new system, I think there's going to be a lot of momentum for that player. So give me Gabriel at 30-1. It's the best odds of any Big 12 player.
Well, I wish you were Julian Edlow, but unfortunately he wasn't. I'm kidding, Colin. I'm kidding. Hey, you wrote it up very nicely on DK Nation last week, but is there a team that you do like to go over their win total?
Kansas, look, people are just underselling Kansas, and I totally understand why, because they are indeed Kansas. And since Mark Mangino got fired for being a terrible person, they haven't really been in the conversation at all. That's not this Kansas team. They bring back, of 131 teams in FBS, they bring back the 7th most players of any team. They're not spectacular in talent, but they play really smart, efficient football. And I think they have one of the best 3 to 5 coaches in all of college football in Lance Leipold, who did a fantastic job at Buffalo, putting in a run-heavy system that can control and win. This Big 12, as a general rule, is down this year. Kansas could be legitimately cashing your over 2.5 ticket by week 4. So that it is absolutely, you just need to basically find one conference win. They're going to beat Duke. They're going to beat their FCS opponent. You just got to find one conference win to cash that ticket. I think Kansas gets there. I think they get there early. I don't hate the plus 170 either on Kansas to win 2 conference games this season. They could be a legitimately spicy team. Bowl games probably a little out of reach, but when you only need to win 3 or 4, give me the Jayhawks.
Let's flip it, my friend. How about a team to go under the win total?
So there's a really good chance that Texas Tech could be a very bad football team this year. Not a lot of consistency. They're about 95th in returning talent in the country. They had some players that could play, but they're not necessarily not a lot. It seems like there's some things going on in Lubbock right now that don't really match up well. I don't know how they're going to move the ball. They're out of conference schedule. It's Murray State. They get Houston at home. That Houston team, that's a team that they can absolutely lose to at home because Houston's going to be very good this year. And they're at NC State, which is a guaranteed loss because NC State's going to be loaded. The ACC, there's a couple ACC teams this year that people are going to need to watch out for. That's a veteran NC State team that's going to be really good. So you need basically to get to that over 5.5 wins. You're either going to need to be 4-5 or 5-4 in the league. And I don't think Texas Tech gets there either way. I think Texas Tech at best wins 3 conference games this year. I am under on Texas Tech.
Okay, as we saw, Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State, they're all bunched together, Colin, in that coaches poll at 9, 10, 11, Texas 18. But on the DraftKings Sportsbook, Oklahoma's actually plus 200 to win this conference with Texas at plus 280. So do you like the value of Baylor or OK State to win the conference?
I'll take Baylor at plus 550. I think that's okay. Oklahoma is the best team in this league, but I think Baylor is really well coached. I need to see a little bit more with Jerry Lohan having transferred to South Florida out of their starting quarterback, Simeon. But I think on the whole, there's a little bit more value on Baylor. Baylor will play defense. That's the thing. This Big 12, we've all talked about like Big 12, no defense, There's a couple teams this league can actually stop people. Oklahoma State's one of them, and Baylor's the other. So I think there's a chance that Baylor can get off the field enough to give themselves a chance. So yeah, I would take Baylor at 550 over Oklahoma State at 280.
Mentioned it off the top, Texas got that one first place vote, so that coach, probably likes Texas at plus 5,000 odds to win a championship this year. Which team's odds do you like best for a flyer on a championship ticket?
To win the whole thing, so I actually like Baylor a little bit more than Oklahoma, and here's why. Baylor at 100-1. They're going to get a game against BYU at BYU. BYU is loaded this year. This is going to be the best BYU team since like Jim McMahon. They're going to be really, really good. So if Baylor can find a way to steal that one, and Baylor goes 10-2 or 11-1 this season, or excuse me, BYU goes 10-2 or 11-1 this season, that's going to be the quality win that Baylor needs to give them a chance to get into the mix. So Oklahoma at 40-1. Look, they've reached 4 playoffs, but they've also never won a game in the playoffs either. So I would take Baylor here, but again, look, this is the SEC's year. Like the talent gap is just too wide right now. Alabama's second string could probably make the playoff. So I'm staying away from all teams in the SEC to win the championship this year. Maybe you could put a tickle on Ohio State. I don't see it, but this is the SEC's year. If I had to take a flyer, though, I'm going to take Baylor at 100-1 over Oklahoma at 40-1.
It's true Oklahoma may not win this year, but they have made the playoff 4 times. Only Big 12 team to do so, Colin. At plus 450 on the DraftKings Sportsbook, do you like anyone's odds to make the college football playoff, the CFP, in the Big 12?
No. And that's only because Baylor is not available. If Baylor was on there, I actually would like to take a tickle on them, somewhere in the 15, 20, 25 range. I don't know where the number would be set, but I think Baylor could definitely make some noise. If they find a way to run out, that BYU game is going to be huge for their ability to show the committee that they can win and they can win on the road. So I would like Baylor Baylor if there was an option available, but since it's not, just stay away. This conference, it's really wide open this year. Anything can happen. The variance in the Big 12, I would say, is higher than any of the other Power 5 conferences this season.
All right, well, I think we're good here. I think we're ready to call this a show and call it a weekend. Colin, thanks so much for joining us, giving us your thoughts. College football's right around the corner. NFL football's here. We mentioned it. You got a boatload of games coming up, 5 tonight, 9 over the weekend. Lots of baseball betting on the way. And we are going to talk more baseball coming up on the slate a little bit later on after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim. I'll be with Steve Buchanan and Matt LaMarca, or maybe I'll just ditch it and let the two of them handle it because they're really, really good. Join us. Thanks to Drew, to Cody, to Samir, to Howie, of course. I'm Adam Kaufman. Enjoy your weekend again. The slate later on. Madden Sims begin at noon. We'll see you.